Picture this. You're at a family gathering. The food's decent, everyone's smiling, and the room buzzes with conversation. Your cousin is talking about their amazing new job, big title, better salary, but their eyes tell a different story. Burnout, emptiness. Then your aunt is gushing about her perfect marriage, while her husband scrolls through his phone, completely checked out. People ask each other polite questions, give polished answers, laugh at the right moments, and yet something's missing. Genuine connection. And in the corner of the room, there's always that one person, quiet, observant, not jumping into every conversation, not pretending. They're just watching, seeing through the entire performance. And maybe you've wondered, are they shy, awkward, antisocial? No. They're just operating on a different frequency. Let's clear something up that society keeps getting wrong. Introverts are not broken extroverts. For decades, we've been taught that quiet people need fixing, that they should speak up more, get out more, or be more outgoing. But this narrative is not only false, it's toxic. It ignores the real truth. Introverts aren't antisocial, they're anti-bullshit. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who coined the terms introvert and extrovert, saw something brilliant. He realized that introverts have a kind of internal power that's completely misunderstood. It's not about being afraid of people, it's about being selective, purposeful, strategic with energy. Here's the idea no one teaches in school. Every interaction is an energy transaction. Extroverts thrive on stimulation. They gain energy from conversations, crowds, attention. But introverts? They run on a different operating system. Socializing burns energy fast. That's why an introvert might love deep conversations with close friends, but feel completely drained after a day of small talk or office chit-chat. It's not weakness, it's intelligent energy management. And here's the kicker. Introverts have something like an authenticity radar. You know that feeling when someone says all the right words, but something feels off? Like their vibe doesn't match their voice? That's your radar. And for introverts, it's always on. They can feel when a conversation is fake, when someone's hiding something, when people are posturing instead of connecting. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. And it's why introverts often avoid group settings. Not because they dislike people, but because they can't stand performance disguised as connection. Look around the next time you're in a group conversation. Who's truly listening? Who's waiting for their turn to talk? Who's being real and who's just maintaining an image? Introverts are always tracking that. And yes, it's exhausting. But here's the beautiful part. They're not opting out of life. They're choosing where their energy matters most. They'd rather have one deep, meaningful connection than 10 surface-level exchanges. They'd rather spend time creating, reflecting, or thinking deeply than faking interest at a networking event. They're not socially anxious. They're socially intentional. Let's talk about something that introverts rarely get credit for: emotional intelligence. Not the kind people fake on resumes or in job interviews. I'm talking about real, grounded emotional awareness, the kind that helps you sense tension before words are spoken, that lets you read body language like a second language, that helps you understand what someone needs without them saying it out loud. Introverts are often incredibly emotionally intelligent, not because they were born that way, but because they had to be. When you spend a lifetime on the edge of group dynamics, watching more than speaking, you notice things. You observe how people behave when they think no one's paying attention. You start to feel what's unspoken in a conversation, and you begin to understand the emotional currents that run beneath the surface of social interaction. That's what introverts master. They're not disconnected. They're deeply tuned in, just not in the loud, obvious ways. They know when someone's smile isn't real. They sense when a friend is struggling, even when everything looks fine. They feel when the energy in a room shifts, and they adjust accordingly. This gives them a powerful advantage. They don't just react, they respond with precision. And because of that, people often turn to introverts when it matters most. Not when there's a party, but when there's a problem. Not for attention, but for understanding. Introverts create safe spaces, spaces where people feel heard, maybe for the first time in a long time. Spaces where the mask can come off. Spaces where silence isn't awkward, but sacred. That's not soft, that's strong. It's a kind of leadership the world desperately needs more of, the kind that's not built on ego, but on empathy. The kind that listens before speaking, observes before judging, acts with depth instead of impulse. Now, here's something else nobody talks about. Introverts aren't just emotionally aware of others, they're also deeply self-aware. When they choose solitude, it's not because they're hiding, it's because they're processing. They're asking questions like, why did that conversation drain me? What did I learn from that interaction? What do I really want right now? This kind of inner clarity is rare, especially in a world that constantly tells us to move faster, do more, talk louder. Introverts do something radical instead. They slow down, they turn inward, they reflect. And through that, they develop what Jung called an internal validation system. That means they don't need a crowd to feel valuable. They don't need applause to feel seen. They don't need constant feedback to feel grounded. They know who they are. And in a world that profits off insecurity, that kind of self-trust is revolutionary. Because when you don't need external approval to feel okay, you become unshakable. Hard to manipulate, hard to pressure, hard to distract. Introverts become immune to the social games most people play. They don't follow trends, they don't chase clout, they don't pretend to be someone they're not just to fit in. Instead, they stay rooted, selective, clear. That's why they're often behind the scenes of the most meaningful work in the world. They're the writers, the thinkers, the engineers, the designers, the artists, the deep creators of culture. Not because they crave fame, but because they crave truth. And here's the twist. Solitude isn't lonely for them. It's a creative sanctuary. It's where they connect the dots, where they solve complex problems, where they create the kind of work that changes people's lives. Einstein? Solitude. Virginia Woolf? Solitude. Nikola Tesla? Solitude. That's not an accident. It's a pattern. Because real genius doesn't shout. It builds quietly. And while the world chases faster, louder, shinier things, introverts are building foundations. Now, let's zoom out. In a world where everyone's performing, online, at work, even at home, something vital is being lost: authenticity. Social media has turned self-expression into self-marketing. Work culture rewards visibility over value. Even our friendships sometimes feel like curated highlight reels instead of real, raw connection. And amid all that noise, introverts offer something the world is starving for: signal, truth, stillness. They're not trying to be seen. They're trying to see clearly. And that right there is revolutionary. Because introverts aren't interested in climbing the loudest stage. They're interested in understanding what's actually happening backstage. They're not obsessed with gathering followers. They're focused on cultivating real relationships. They're not chasing constant stimulation. They're building mental clarity. While others perform connection, introverts create it. While others build brands, introverts build trust. While others speak to be heard, introverts wait until what they say will matter. And here's a truth that might surprise you. Society desperately needs introverts, but often doesn't realize it. The systems we live in were mostly designed by and for extroverted values: speed over depth, volume over thoughtfulness, visibility over inner alignment. But those systems are showing cracks. People are burning out. Disconnection is rising. The world feels louder, but not wiser. That's why the quiet ones matter now more than ever. They're not just individuals with a different social style. They're the antidote to a culture addicted to performance. They're the ones who say what no one else dares to. They're the ones who see the flaws in the system and quietly build better ones. They're the ones who step up when it matters, not for credit, but for truth. And here's a truth that might surprise you. Society desperately needs introverts, but often doesn't realize it. The systems we live in were mostly designed by and for extroverted values: speed over depth, volume over thoughtfulness, visibility over inner alignment. But those systems are showing cracks. People are burning out. Disconnection is rising. The world feels louder, but not wiser. That's why the quiet ones matter now more than ever. They're not just individuals with a different social style. They're the antidote to a culture addicted to performance. They're the ones who say what no one else dares to. They're the ones who see the flaws in the system and quietly build better ones. They're the ones who step up when it matters, not for credit, but for truth. And yes, many of the most impactful leaders in history have been introverts. Bill Gates, Barack Obama, Warren Buffett, Rosa Parks. All of them led not with volume, but with vision. Not with charisma, but with clarity. They didn't dominate the room. They centered it. That's the kind of leadership the world is aching for right now. Steady, honest, grounded. And here's the final message you need to hear. If you're an introvert, there is nothing wrong with you. You don't need to fix your quiet. You don't need to force yourself into draining environments. You don't need to apologize for choosing solitude over noise. You just need to honor the way you're wired. Because your quiet is not a gap. It's not an absence. It's a depth. Your ability to sit with silence, to listen deeply, to choose your words with care, that's not a liability. That's a superpower. So here's the challenge. Stop trying to be what the world expects. Start being who you are, fully. Trust your instincts. Guard your energy. Create from your quiet. Connect with intention. And lead from within. Because the revolution we need doesn't scream. It whispers. It watches. It moves slowly but powerfully. And it begins with the quiet ones. The thinkers. The feelers. The observers, the creators. It begins with you. If this message resonated with you, share it. Send it to a quiet friend who's been made to feel too much or not enough. Let them know they are not broken. They are brilliant. Because in a world built on performance, being real is rebellion. And the introvert revolution, it's already begun.